Well, hello, and welcome to the We Are Power webinar. It is great to be back. And this month, we are talking all around neurodiversity. Really massive importance, so many different things that we can talk about. And we'll talk about today because I have got one stellar panel here in the studio with me today. And we want to hear from you too. So if you have got any comments or anything that you want to share, any of your lived experience, please do drop a comment, a note in. So even if you're watching live today or you're watching on catch up, you'll be able to pick up on those comments as well, so we keep that conversation going, because this is all about building neurodiverse workplaces. And there's some real key stats that we're going to be and information that we're going to be talking about today and exploring about what neuroinclusion really means in practice. You know, moving beyond awareness days, we had a chat about that before we started rolling today, and policy statements and tick boxes. We want to make this lasting, we want to make this purposeful, and we want to help you to make some of those right decisions or make some of those right, sort of commitments. So an estimated 1 in 7 people in the UK workforce are neurodivergent, and the real number is likely to be higher because we know there's a lot of underdiagnosis. There's a lot of people only just being diagnosed. So we know that number's going to change. 37% of neurodivergent adults are in employment. Is the workplace set up? Discuss. Adult diagnosis rates are rising, as I've just said, but the workplace is we're still playing catch up. It's that catch up. And employees often face those barriers, not due to the differences, because of the systems that have been in place, probably for decades, centuries. It's the way we've always done it. But not today. That's what I say. So I'm going to hand over to our wonderful panel. Just give a quick intro, because they all come with, many hats, some very stylish hats. We'll start with you, Michael.
Thank you very much, Simone. I'm Michael Jakubiak, founder and CEO of ND Axon. I'm also gay, ADHD, dyslexic with hidden disabilities who got fired twice. Not because I'm bad at my job, the opposite, because I work and process information differently as 350 million others undiagnosed adults at work.
Wow, thank you, Michael. Catherine.
Hi everyone, my name is Catherine Millen, and I am the founder and company director of Be What You See Consultancy, and we are a equity, diversity and inclusion training company that specialises in workplace discrimination prevention. So it's essentially my job to go in and work with clients and look at how they can make a workplace more inclusive. I was diagnosed as an adult with ADHD and dyslexia, and it was the most liberating thing I think I've ever been through in my life, because it was the first time that I really started to understand how my mind and brain work, and it's what led me to want to be an entrepreneur and just really work in an environment that was built for me to thrive.
And so, I think if you forgot one fact there.
I am also a Northern Power Women award winner. So yeah, I won the Person with Purpose Award this year, actually in 2025.
And brought your trophy with us to the studio.
And I brought my trophy.
Right, congratulations and welcome. Emily, thank you for hot-footing it up from sunny Guildford.
Sunny Guildford indeed, although it was raining when I walked to the train station this morning. Hi everybody, my name's Emily Robinson. I am a recruitment business partner for Connected Places Catapult. Connected Places Catapult are an innovation consultancy. So one of the things that I'm really passionate about as a neurodiverse individual myself is diversity of thought. If we do things the same way we always have with the same people, then we won't get that innovation and we won't get that change. So I've been really passionate along my career of recruitment and HR to make the workplace more inclusive. And having had very different experiences in the education system, it's like, what can we do moving forward, and how can we embrace diversity of thought?
And so we want this session to be practical. We want this to be informative, and we want to, sort of pass on some of that knowledge so that you can take that back into wherever you are, whether it's into your workplace, whether it's you're leading a business, whether you're not quite sure what to do. We want you to be able to get some hopefully top tips away from us today. And as I say, if you've got anything that you want to share, please drop it in the comments. So, Catherine, what is neurodiversity? What does it really mean?
Such a big question.
I know, isn't it? God,
really
let's just start with that little one, shall we?
Yeah, and I think, do you know what? I think it's a really, really important question. One of the things that I always get asked about when we deliver training on neurodiversity is, well, what does it mean? What are the differences? How can we support people in the workplace? So the simplest way I think that I'd describe it to the listeners is to see neurodiversity as an umbrella term. What it is describing is the differences on how our brains work and also our different behavioural traits. And then within that, you will then see things, or people maybe identify it as, say, for example, neurodivergent. So that would be someone like myself would say, I have ADHD, I have dyslexia. And what that basically means is my brain and mind work in a certain way. Then you'll have a group of people who might identify as what we call neurotypical. So they are people who kind of sit with outside of that diagnosis, whose brains and mind work in a typical way when we're thinking about the majority. And what I always try and educate people on is when we're talking about neurodiversity, just see it as differences of the brain and differences of how we behave. And we all fall under that term, regardless if we've got a diagnosis or not. But it's about embracing the diversity of thought that we have, and just know that some people might want to do things one way, some people might want to do things another way, and sometimes that's dictated on how their brain works.
May I add to this a bit of a history? Yeah. So there was actually, I think it's worth to mention that the term neurodiversity was first time used in 1998. Mm-hmm. So Australian sociologist Judy Singer discovered first that each of us is neurologically different, and certain group called neurodivergent significantly differs from the rest of the society. And that includes conditions such as autism, ADHD or dyslexia. And that's how it all started, only in 1998.
Only in 1998?
Yes.
Yeah.
It feels like just round the corner, doesn't it?
Yes.
And when you look at the research and even the time of when certain conditions have been researched, if you look at ADHD, for example, you're only talking like the last kind of 50 years where there's been pioneering research that has led to changes. And I always talk to people about getting people to think about the whole concept of being a hunter or a gatherer. And so to me, when we talk about that concept, I'm like, we are talking about people who were ADHD or people that are autistic. Now we've almost just got a label to put it on, and we've got a diagnostic framework to say, okay, if someone's brain works in this way, you will be diagnosed as this. If someone's brain works in this way, we will diagnose you as that.
And you just taught there, like 1998.
Yes.
It was the first time it was given a
label.
A label.
It was labeled.
Yeah.
First time was named because we had the ADHD and autism before.
Yeah, and dyslexia and all. So what do you think umbrella it sat under before then? Because now
I've got a very good answer for this. There's all of those naughty, lazy, fidgety kids. All of us who then were in 90s and 20s and earlier overlooked by the state as those kids. And now we're all adults now in this neurotypical world trying to fit in with our neurodivergent traits who never got recognized, or they were recognized incorrectly. Yeah. And now we need to deal with this. That's why we had such a surge in diagnosis as well, because of the way your brain operates in time. Your coping mechanisms in time doesn't work as well as they work when you're a kid. That's why loads of adults also discovers in time, am I slightly different than rest of the society or not?
And as you were king of stats and dates today, you opened. What was the stat you opened with about the number of employed undiagnosed?
350 million. I think it's worth to add why I know the stats, because I didn't mention at all what we do as ND Axon. So we develop a passive diagnostic technology for all of the mental health and neurodivergent conditions to make UK the first country in the world with no diagnostic cues, and to make the process which allows to diagnose people with any forms and questionnaires.
Wow. What was your motivation? Was that self-motivated?
It was. I spot patterns in people's faces. That's how it all started. I was running a pilot program for the defense company in terms of neurodiversity hiring, and I was using my pattern for people's faces and how to communicate with them to get on with the program. When we finished, we got a feedback. If not my work, they would never be able to work with us. And I was thinking, I cannot multiply myself. I can multiply technology. So I came up with a suite of tools with the technology. And then I had a eureka moment when I realized that this tool, if enhanced, it actually can solve the massive systematic problems in healthcare. On the 13th September 23, to be precise.
That is your superpower. I told you, Stato today, isn't it? Emily, can I bring you in? Because I think you were going to jump into sort of the past conversation.
I was, so I do feel very passionately about the label of naughty, because that's something that I want to say I identify with, but it's when I look back through my school reports, I was not a naughty child, so I didn't get a diagnosis until much later on in life through the education system. And when you read the school reports, it's so obvious. It's like, Emily is charming. Emily speaks to everyone in class, but we wish she'd sit in her seat. And it's things like that. And it's like, because I wasn't naughty, I wasn't put through any sort of recognisable diagnosis. It was, well, she's charming and lovely, she's doing her work, but actually I couldn't focus and I probably needed a bit more care and attention in the education system. So when you said the previous label was naughty, it's like, I fully identify with that. But I wasn't naughty myself.
And I think it comes back to that thing of, now we talk a lot more about what is the norm within a workplace. And I think what you were saying there, Emily, there was an expected level of behaviour, certainly when I was at school. You learn in this way and you behave in that way.
Yeah.
So that then became the norm in the classroom. And anything else that fell outside of that, you was maybe seen as a problem child. And I see it all the time in the workplace when certain tasks are given. And I always try to communicate to managers, or other founders or CEOs, your ultimate goal is for that task to get done. So if you've got one member of staff who's going to go this way, round the hills, up the mountain, but the task still gets done, that's okay, to this other person who's going to follow the paved path. And for me, it's around us really starting to question, what do we mean by the norm when we're talking about workplace culture? What do we mean about systems and processes working for everybody? And actually questioning, do they work for everybody? I was similar to Emily when I was in school. Really, really good, high achiever academically, behaviour side, questionable. But what I used to do things differently all the time and nobody really picked up on it. So I really struggled to read a book, be able to retain the information and then write notes. So I used to make these mind maps and they were everywhere. Everything would be turned into a mind map, but nobody picked up that was different. My teacher taught me how to do mind maps and I still came out with the same grades. But for me, I could close my eyes, visualize what the mind map looked like. And that was my way to be able to see the words on the page differently, as opposed to just writing reams and reams of notes. And it worked and I passed. But because I wasn't necessarily presenting with like disruptive behaviour, I just found a different way. Nobody ever picked it up. And I went to college, went to university, did a degree, got a master's, and it never got picked up until I was an adult, which I think, again, is this thing on about women in particular masking. And I think a lot of people that are neurodivergent, we've just lived in a world where we've had to find a way.
It is. There was a thing with the diagnosing in women, lack of research. All of the research was focused solely on white male individuals. That's why it takes so much time. And your symptoms, female symptoms, are totally different to the male symptoms as well. And you're better at masking, that's for sure.
So we're talking about, how do we create this building this in culture within the workplace? Okay, so let's just hit with a few top tips. What did you found a way to master it with your mind maps and high achiever anyway? So you're self-starter, you go, this is how I'm going to do it. But what, if you were to go back to your younger self, would you still do the same? Would you ask for help?
I think I would definitely ask for more help. And I think just have the confidence. For me, it was really challenging not being able to do things when everybody else around you is doing them in one way and my brain just didn't work in that way. So for me in particular, I'm really good at listening to something, being able to remember it, and then almost presenting it back. If I've got to read something, I struggle to retain the information. And, when I was at school, they didn't necessarily have the technology or the software to be able to do that. So I think to younger Catherine, I'd just say just find the words and the confidence to ask. Because when the few times that I did ask, had some amazing teachers that were like, I'll give you the time, I'll sit down with you, let's do it this way. And then I just learned a new way on how to do something.
But that's almost like managing up, isn't it? You almost got to say to your teacher, I'm not disruptive, I'm not naughty, I just need to do it a different way.
Yeah.
How did you get fired twice?
How did I get fired twice?
Is this the whole other weapon?
I will tell you. This is, there was this interesting. So I also had loads of different achievements in recruitment, etc. I changed the company, and of course, I was building a cyber capabilities for the business, and they didn't like that I didn't work the way like all of the other office worked. So they told me that I don't fit the culture, the culture in the business, which was a shock when I was at the meeting. But the more interesting one was the second one. So I got fired. I got headhunted straight away to become director within the counterterrorism recruitment. And was the 3 months. That's when I discovered I'm ADHD and dyslexic, ran this program for the biggest defense company in the world. We got this feedback. I came up with all of the plan, tools, applied for the accelerator, came back to my partners because I had 50% shares in the business. Say, listen, guys, that's what we do. They told me, no, Michael, this is not what we do. On the same day, that's a termination of your contract. So that's how I was fired second time. And on the same day, I said I cannot stand it anymore. So on the same day, I went to company's house, opened my own business, called the accelerator, switched the name from their company to mine, and that's how the business got born.
Love that. Just love it.
Just be more Michael, quite frankly. Emily, so navigating within an organisation as well, because I've just put a circle here. It's not quite a mind map, but it's
getting there.
It's your mind map.
It's my map. Nobody wants to go inside there. But is culture? We've talked about tick boxes and masking, but is that something that organisations can hide behind? Oh, it's not our culture, or you don't fit our culture. How have you? This is 3 questions in one, by the way. But I suppose what I'm getting to is, have you managed to educate up the way Catherine has as well?
I think it's really important that everyone's on board with the journey. And I can't quote stats the same way Michael can, so apologies for that. But there's loads of research out there that the more inclusive the culture, the more successful the business. And
I've got a stat.
Yeah. Michael, jump in with a stat. Don't back me up.
If you're able to identify your neurodivergent employees and help them, the minimum increase productivity is 30%, with some research showing up to 67% of increase.
I knew it was big, but I didn't know it was that big. So I'm delighted. I think I'm really fortunate in that innovation needs creativity and different thinking, but I've certainly worked in other places before and can very much identify with Michael's story of working in a recruitment agency where we had to work in a certain way with certain systems. I was a good biller. I didn't do it quite the same way as everyone else, but because I was making money, they kind of let it slide rather than embracing it and encouraging it and going, right, there's a different way of doing things. How can we do it better? How can we encourage everyone else? But really, it's about asking the question. So if you are a manager or a leader in any capacity, speaking to people, how can I work with you to get the best out of you? What would make you and I work together successfully? And generally, the adjustments and neurodivergent needs will probably benefit a neurotypical as well. Simple things like, let's put the agenda in every meeting rather than just a blank meeting invite. Tools and productivity, it's all there. We just need to be open to having that cultural shift to include everybody a bit more.
I think we need to listen. So I was just thinking about just before I got fired, I fired myself from Reed. I asked like after the COVID, they tried to force me to come to the office. So during the COVID, I broke all of the records in Reed in their 60-year-old history. The COVID finished and they forced me to come to the office 5 times a week. I didn't know I'm ADHD and dyslexic back then, but I knew it won't work. So I told them, I don't know why. If you force me to come to the office, you do completely opposite way, or like it will be counterproductive putting me to the office. Like, I'm happy to do whatever you want to do, but don't put me to the office. And there was 2 managers. They had the power to not put me to the office, and they still decided to not use it. Brought me to the office. 2 weeks later, I handled my notice. Because it's like why people don't listen. You don't need to have a formal diagnosis or you're like a bit diagnosed anyway to know how you work. I'm 35 now. I know what works, what doesn't for me, at least in some cases. So I'm able to communicate that, and that's down to someone if they listen or not.
And hybrid is a great example because you probably needed to hyper focus. You probably didn't need the buzz of all the phones in the background, but you needed to settle down and do your own work, and you'd identified that works for you.
Yeah.
You communicated that, and management chose to ignore your reasonable request, which is disappointing.
I think, sorry.
I was coming to you anyway, Catherine.
I think as well, what I've seen in terms of a bit of a fear or a worry from managers or senior leaders, and it comes from a place of they've not been given the tools, the resources or education to understand the different neurodivergent conditions to begin with. So what I tend to find in training is the first thing that we'll do is we'll talk about what it is. So this is what ADHD is, this is what dyslexia is. And I think it just enables managers, leaders or people within the workplace to just have that empathy and understanding. Because a lot of the time, I know personally, I will do certain things. The way that I work is very different, largely because of the role that I'm in, but also largely due to the fact that I have ADHD and dyslexia. So I'm always conscious of saying to my team, I'm going to do this way, and this is linked to me having dyslexia because I'm not able to do it in that process. So for me, it's also around that education piece. If we're going to ask people to make the workplace inclusive, and I especially think this for managers and people who've got to give that support, I think it's what our business is doing to offer that awareness training. Because without that awareness, managers or leaders are going in, maybe making assumptions or not really understanding then where my needs come from. And it kind of creates a bit of a tension. I'm advocating for something or I want to change, but nobody's told anybody why. And I don't think the ownership should be on the individual. I think that needs to come top down from the organisation in terms of offering awareness training, offering education for managers so they can go into those meetings feeling confident to support their staff as well.
And it's leadership, isn't it? It's leadership, it's inclusive leadership. And I think sometimes it can just feel, well, we've already got policies.
Yeah.
It's too difficult.
Yeah.
It's too difficult. We've got that'll work. How do we, we're talking about 1998 here, since, but how do we shift this? How do we really set those, we talked about, how do we set those bold, audacious targets to make this shift and make this not just sort of it feels drip feed at times.
You know what I feel like? It feels like sorry for jumping in, but it feels from my side, it feels that we stick so much from the employee perspective to having labels to help that this is counterproductive because people don't want to disclose. And we won't change in a year or two ability for people to disclose their conditions because of the trust issue broken for years dealing with employers. So to actually fix the situation, we need to come up with a solution which allows to help people without giving, without forcing them to disclose any conditions or their differences. If they need a noise cancelling headphones because they requested that, they had a reason for that, and the employer don't need to know why they requested that.
Yeah. No, I agree, and I think it's about creating a culture of everybody. How can everybody achieve and not having a process where people then feel othered? So one of the things that we have at Be What You See is a space that's got loads of different things in, like noise cancelling headphones, timers for the Pomodoro technique. And I always say to everybody, this is a box full of tools, anybody can use them. So some people in my team will have ones that they use all the time. Others will just use them as a one-off because they've got a certain task. And it's just made it an environment where we've really acknowledged everybody's individual ways of working without saying, oh yeah, Catherine's got ADHD. It's more, oh, Catherine likes to work in that way. And that makes me feel more comfortable. And I think it just kind of creates a working environment where we're not othering people and, like I said, kind of jumping on those labels.
Pomodoro technique, just to explain.
Yeah, so the Pomodoro technique, So I use this in the form of 25-minute sprints. So one of the things around having ADHD is I'm quite impulsive. I'll get distracted really easily. So you can imagine if I've got a certain task to do that I don't really like, I'll use this particular technique. So I have a timer. I'll set it for 25 minutes. I will work on that task for 25 minutes. Timer will go off. Then I'll have a 5-minute break. So I usually do around 3 or 4 of those sprints. Part of my ADHD makes me have what we call time blindness, because a lot of people would just be like, oh, well, don't you just know 25 minutes? But I don't know 5 minutes to 25 minutes. So it's just little strategies like that I have to really help me complete certain tasks in work. And what I really like about it is when I came in and, my team kind of see the things that are on my desk, there's not really any questions, or they know when I've got the timer out, they're not going to come and ask me a question and try and distract me, because they know, right, actually, Catherine's in a 25-minute sprint. It's really important not to be like, oh, can I just grab your attention and stuff. So yeah, that's just one of probably about 15 different strategies that I use just to get through the working day.
And what would you say some simple, I always like to go simple, because sometimes people can 100% just say, it's too big, too bold, we can't afford to do it, we're too small a business, we're too lean a business, we're too this. There's always an excuse not to, isn't there?
There is always an excuse. Yeah.
So what about some simple, everyday inclusive practices that could be brought in, Emily? Do you think that for both leaders and for colleagues, just to support our employees?
So you've touched upon this already in terms of a different working environment, which can be done with hybrid, but you can also adopt this in an office environment as well. So we've got a quiet room. In the quiet room, you don't take Teams calls, you don't speak to people. So if I'm working on something where actually I just need to get my head down for an hour, although I might adopt the 25 sprint technique, I know that I won't be interrupted. No one's going to come and tap on my shoulder for my attention. The quiet room is to be respected. That's quite a simple thing, depending on your office layout. It might be different lighting available in meeting rooms. Some places are noisier than others. Another thing is for inclusive recruitment, letting people know the environment they're going to come into. It might be a bit overwhelming going into a really busy, noisy reception with strip lighting, whereas actually we can have a quieter place to sit where, like today, I was welcomed with a glass of water and the option for a coffee, which is always good. But a lot of the time it is something simple, or flexible start and finish arrangements. When do we get the best out of you? Are you a morning person? Or actually, does it take you a bit longer to get in the morning and you'd rather have a quieter train to work? But a lot of it starts with that psychological safety and having a space where colleagues feel able to discuss that with their line manager. So the fact that you've got the tools out and they're not being questioned, they're just there, you've explained why they might be useful, is great. No one needs to say, oh, I need the timer because I'm ADHD. It can work for a neurotypical and a neurodivergent individual.
Yeah.
And you talked about innovation before, and Catherine, I know we've touched on the awards, Northern Power and Awards, 10th anniversary next year. But one of the categories that we brought in a few years ago with the support of Connected Places Catapult was inclusive innovation. And part of the name change was around trying to talk about that. You think about innovation, it's not just technology.
No.
There's technology, but it's about human-centered approach to so innovation's got a big part to play in this, hasn't it? And I know I'll come to
Stato.
Cool.
Stato over here. Yeah. I was nearly going Elon Musk and then I realised, what am I doing? What part has innovation got to play, that human focus? I know when we get our nominations every year we put a human focused in, and it was all about, it feels like it's calm, considered, thoughtful, which is all the things we're talking about today, which are the top tips that everyone can do, right? Yeah. But innovation's got a massive part to play, hasn't it, in creating these inclusive environments. That's what you've brought in as well, isn't it?
From my side, I would say, with innovation, it's important to involve everyone who the innovation refers to at the blueprint. So from our side, because of we're doing the tools for employers but also for healthcare, we've got clinicians, scientists, patients, and employers work all together with us, patients and diagnose and undiagnosed, working all together to make sure that what we create truly solves the problem, and it's not built for me or for you. It's built to sort particular challenge. So it needs to be developed with people who the challenge is help me with the word. Shit.
We always have that bit.
Edit that.
I keep that bit. That was great.
Yeah, we keep it in. It's all good.
So to come back on, so in terms of innovation, it's important to include all of the people who the innovations refers to at the blueprint. So patients, clinicians, scientists. That's the people who work with us, people who are diagnosed and undiagnosed, to understand what are our challenges, not what we think our challenges are, but what the challenges actually are, and try to sort them. And I think that's important when we're talking about the innovation, to not doing innovation for the innovation's sake, but to truly do it to sort the challenge. So what I see in terms of our competitors, they do follow similar path. They all gives you data. They're using the biomarkers, but they're using the technology which always require tasks from you, which will always have a bias. So it never will sort the bias problem. So then you think, what's the other solution to actually remove the challenge, which is massive for the neurodiversity, bias in filling forms. And that's what we get with our innovation, like identifying what's the actual problems and try to sort them, not replicate them with adding additional layer of technology.
Yeah.
I think as well, it's about centering and empowering the employee. And I think really simple thing that I always speak to managers about, I'm like, did you ask them? Did you create an environment where you came with ideas, but you also empowered them enough to then say, well, what would you like? Or if we've got this option, and this option, which one do you think may work best for you? Yeah. And I think sometimes it is just about not trying to have that universal one size fits all. It's more around facilitating spaces where people feel really comfortable to say, do you know what, for my one-to-one meetings, can we go on a walk? And as a manager being like, do you know what, actually, yeah, let's do it. We will record what's being said, maybe on like a dictaphone, we can type up the minutes later. Do you know what I mean? And I think a lot of it sometimes is about just centering and empowering the individual and creating that space, I think, as a manager. But I think, again, as a manager, being aware that difference is okay. So if they do ask for something to be done differently, like, that's okay. There's a reason for it. And if it works, brilliant, share it. One of the things that I implemented quite early in the company was ways of working passports. Because for me, at first, I felt like I was telling my team I need it to be this way because I've got ADHD. I need it to be this way because I've got dyslexia, which is fine for me. I'm really confident about speaking about it. But then I was like, oh, actually, I don't want somebody else in the team to come in and feel they have to ask for something because of how their brain or mind works, because they might be as comfortable as me. So one of the things that we did very early on is we just sat down and we were like, how do we all like to work? Let's capture this in a passport. And then those passports are shared internally and then externally. So in mine, unless you were an expert on ADHD and dyslexia, you wouldn't know I've got ADHD and dyslexia because it's not a passport that discloses that. But you'll learn how Catherine likes emails. So I need it bullet pointed, I need a deadline, I need things highlighted. Somebody else I don't like it when there's questions like, how are you today? How's your weekend been? I like it just very clear, straight to the point. You can pick up my colleagues and they like their emails completely different. They want that dialogue. They want them to be friendly. And for me, that simple tool plus that openness for us to actually discuss things in the workplace and how we like to work, I think it brought kind of a new innovative way of us working together well as a team. And it also gave us quite a lot of power with like our stakeholders and clients. So I will share it with my clients. And if they send me an email that's a block text, I'll just be like, just a reminder, these are the things that I like, because an email like that is going to take me double the amount of time to go through. So it's around us being inclusive as well.
And that's knowledge share, isn't it? And that's making the best of each individual. And I think one of the recruitment challenges is there's still such a fundamentally high number of neurodivergent individuals that are not employed, that are not going in. What can we do to change that, Catherine? Why and what?
I think a lot of recruitment processes are about seeing how good someone is at interview, not how good they are at the job. Yeah. So that's what needs to be modified.
Jumping through a hoop. There you go.
Yeah. Can you talk to me for an hour and make great eye contact and be charming? Or is it the fact that if it's, I don't know, a role that could be assessed by a task, maybe done in a non-timed environment, if that's the workplace environment, why are we testing them with a verbal interview? Why aren't we testing them with a task? I think it's important to break down how we're looking at people for the jobs that we need and changing things like job adverts and applications. So let's get rid of the jargon. What do you actually want? Neurodivergent individuals might select themselves out from applying if the job advert is too lengthy. They might lose interest in it. And if it's a 5-page form to fill in, they might self-select out of that as well and go, oh, I can't tackle this form. I won't even apply. So we're not even getting those talented people in front. I'm sure we've all got somebody in our network and we go, oh, they're amazing at their job. They're so talented. They just don't interview very well. And it's like, how can we change that? How can we assess them better for the roles?
Yeah, we did a podcast a few weeks ago, actually. Had BT in, and one of their things was just change everything. No, absolutely no CVs, no interviews now. You apply how you want to apply, whether it be audio, voice, video, whatever it may be. You do it your way. The power pack that we did for the students recently, we again at the same logic. You do you. What's the best way? Because some people are good at the design, the creative, photography. We can all express ourselves in a different way because it's a bit like in the workplace, we're all different, aren't we? So forward facing. How in our last few minutes. We can change it all for sure. But we talked right at the start, didn't we, about not having it. How do we go from the tick box to the actual making this part of? This is not part of every strategy right now and every policy. How can we shift this? What can every organisation out there, whether it be a micro one like myself, a small one like Catherine, bigger organisations, how can we, what part have we all got to play to make all businesses across the UK and wider more inclusive from a neurodivergent perspective? What's the one thing?
I think from my side, when I think about it, the first thing that employees should listen, because there's like loads of buzzwords and no actions. And policies are great, but there are policies, it's a piece of paper. It doesn't make anything unless people knows about it. So listen and action what you hear.
I think for me, something that can be done more or less straight away and that includes everybody is that investment of time for staff to be able to learn and be educated, regardless if they've got lived experience or not. I think where I see organisations have done really well is where they incorporate for training around disability as kind of a subtopic, as something that their staff will do every year. Do you know what I mean? And I think that's the thing. If you can train staff and if you can allow your staff the time off, the day-to-day business, right, we're going to go and learn about this and just give them that space to almost audit the workplace themselves, bring to the table, fill out something like a ways of working passport, because that 1 day out of the whole year could impact the whole culture of the organisation. So for me, it's around businesses actually making the time and investing and writing a strategy where it has actually got written in, we are going to allow staff time off the day-to-day to do this.
Emily?
I think everyone needs to be curious. Everyone needs to keep asking those open-ended questions. But I suppose the foundation is you need that psychological safety. So people might not even disclose at application stage when they're going forward that they're neurodivergent or they need adjustments. But actually, if you as a business can say, we embrace different ways of thinking, we embrace differences in our colleagues, then everyone will feel a bit more comfortable in disclosing that. And then you'll naturally get a mixture of thought coming into the business, and then hopefully we'll achieve some of those stats that Michael was quoting about being more profitable because we'll have a better mixture of people in the business.
There was a research, I will just add to this, there was a
stats.
There was a research done across over 100 organizations in the UK, and there was 3 things to make the organization more inclusive and truly embrace that we've got a different neurodiversities in place. So first of all, instead of asking for what you need, It's asking what would you help you and give them the list of things what they can pick from. Because if you ask me what do I need, I don't know what's to select from. People don't know about this. So that's one thing. Instead of asking people what they need, asking what would they help them and give them options like what's to choose from. That's one thing. Secondly was provide development opportunities as well. So to keep people in place, you need to provide them development opportunities. And research says without this, people will leave anyway. So it needs to be, there was two things, right environment and the way we ask questions about it. And the second thing was this development opportunities. I need to provide both in the same time to be able to keep people, make them inclusive as well.
And just finally, as a part B to the question, because, that was coming. But for anyone watching or catching up out there who's going, right, actually, I'm not working because I'm one of Emily's statistics, not yours, although, or I'm in that position that you were where you need to get back in the office. Well, I don't want to do that. Or are Catherine flying on through academia, but just tackling it on her own mind maps. And we talk, but someone out there now thinking, actually, I want to be part of the change because I'm talented and I'm able and I'm ambitious. What can I do to be part of this as well? How can I help and pave the way?
Champion if you work for this organization, every organization needs a champion. So be a champion. Don't afraid to speak up. If you feel power internally to drive the change, just speak up. Came up with some initiatives. The worst case scenario, what you can hear? No. An organization you work for, you can always change it.
And I think for me, what I would advise people to do who do want to be an ally and who, or maybe do have lived experience and want to do more, I think it's around just kind of making contact with the community and knowing and sharing stories and learning, and then almost taking them back to your workplaces to enforce change. I would say probably for people who are neurodivergent and are maybe kind of struggling at the moment to find the workplace that is right for them, one thing that really helped me was getting a coach and actually having somebody who, the coaching method is something that's been proven as a way to really help support and manage ADHD because it's very action orientated. It's that bigger picture thinking and it's somebody who's going to hold you accountable. So I think it's then around people just knowing that it's okay to ask for help and then maybe looking to go to somebody like a coach, get that help and almost create a action plan for yourself to kind of take it forward. And then I think, just kind of being confident with it then and knowing, is this the right workplace for me? And it's okay to ask those questions. And if it's not, map out what is the right workplace for you and then go and find it.
Emily?
I'm trying to think what I can add to that. I think to echo, whilst everyone can drive the change of culture, it's everyone that walks in through the door. And I always use the analogy of the traffic jam. You can't moan about the traffic jam if you're one of the cars sat in the traffic. So moaning about the culture isn't productive unless you're willing to do something to change. So if people want to be allies and help champion things, that's fantastic. I think just being open about it encourages others to speak as well. So having those champion or diversity networks that focus on different ways of thinking and neurodiversity is a great way to make people feel included, and then getting the message out there externally to make your company more appealing for people to join is also a wonderful thing.
Because that's it. We all want to work with and for employers and businesses that are doing good stuff with the right behaviours. Michael, Catherine, Emily, thank you so much for joining me. So much to take away, so much to digest, but some of it doesn't always feel difficult. Curiosity, it's something we've all got. There's nothing here that's a barrier or shouldn't be a barrier. Sure. Curiosity, time, listening. Don't just sit in the traffic. Take action on it. Speak up. What you're learning, pass it on. Make sure you're taking it back and pass it on. We've all got a part to play. So whether we're the leaders, the followers, the employed, the want to be employed, the learners, we've all got a part to play in this to make inclusive neurodivergent workplaces. Please do keep the conversation going. welcome all of your chats, which we will follow up on. Thank you for joining us today. It's been an inspiring and motivating because it's about doing, isn't it? And I ultimately always think it is about deeds, not words. It's about the doing, isn't it? We could all talk. So take this webinar as your motivation to go and do something. Michael, Catherine, Nick, Emily, again, thank you so much for joining me, and we will see you on the next webinar.